Alright guys, so let's recap a little bit when we're talking about finding distance. So there's two things to remember when we're finding distance, and the first is that if they're in the same quadrant, so if we look at them and they have, if they fall in the first, if they both fall in the second, if they both fall in the third, if they both fall in the fourth, if they're in the same, what we're going to do is we're going to subtract their absolute values. Okay, so if they fall into different quadrants, so for example, one's in the first and one's in the second, or one's in the fourth and one's in the third. If they are in different quadrants, we're going to add their absolute values. Now remember what we did in class. We can always graph them on the coordinate plane and count the units between to check our work. So if you're unsure of your answer, that's what I suggest for you to do, is just to graph those 2 points and then count the units in between. All right, so let's take a look at two examples. The first one says there, find the distance between -3 and 1 and 2, 1. Okay, so the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to stack those coordinates on top of each other so we can kind of compare which quadrants are in, see which one has the same coordinate. So if we look at -3, 1, -3, 1 falls into the second quadrant. +2, +1 falls into the first quadrant. So since they are in different quadrants, we're going to add their absolute values. So next step, what we're going to do is we're going to mark out the coordinates that are the same. If we look, these two ordered pairs have the same y coordinate, so we can mark those out. Okay. Now what we're going to do is we're going to have the absolute value of 3 plus the absolute value of 2. So that's our math sentence, and here in a second when you do your own examples, you're going to have to fill those in. You're going to have to write your absolute value math sentence. So we have the absolute value of -3, we know is 3, plus the absolute value of 2 is 2. So the distance between is 5 units. Okay, all right, so let's take a look at our second example here. It says find the distance between -3, 3 and -3, 1. Again, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to stack those coordinates on top of each other so we can get a better look at where they're at. And then we're going to identify which quadrant they're in. -3, +3 is in the second quadrant. -3, +1 also in the second quadrant. So since they are in the same quadrants, we're going to subtract the absolute values. So next we need to mark out which coordinate that they have in common. If you look, the x coordinate on both of these are the same. So we're going to mark those out. We don't need those. And then we're going to write an absolute value math sentence with the other two. So we have the absolute value of 3. They're in the same, so we'll subtract, minus the absolute value of 1. Again, here in a second when you do your own examples, you're going to have to write those absolute value sentences. So now we just solve. The absolute value of 3 is 3. The absolute value of 1 is 1. So when we subtract, we get that there is a distance of 2 units between these points. And again, guys, I have to emphasize, if you're not sure of your answer or if something looks crazy, plot them in a coordinate plane, count them between just to make sure that you're right.